gonna be completely honest, I haven't dealt with it so. Now I'm ready.
Okay.
Thank you all so much for your patience.
The United States federal government significantly reduces marine presence in Okinawa. The advantage is the alliance marine presence and politically sustainable signals crisis in the alliance that is 2-1. The rates remain to little these has been still made over the heavy parts of recent Okinawa's bad years. Obviously, among a number of Okinawa structures, squad of the supposed to be decentralized in face authority sources that shot up utility or quick looking victory, but it's close control by some of the military defense story 57% over so they opposed to Honoko part of the operations for the French security was part of the ship at the missing public bid over the Okinawa special government over the Okinawa disaster require closure for the post replacement for the battles over the press will be in the core. Reducing presence is the only option. Anti-base sentiment spills over obsessed the balance of power. Yamada 120 is considered the potential reform of the watching European participation in the basic master presentations led to Okinawa project and agreements must be met with empathy. Rest to present the delicate power of the region of this place to take advantage of weakness of the independent food and self centered over the China tip and exchange. This quote process discontent to lead to serious competition of the region and cover of choice. Okinawa goes squash and self determination can extension continue support for the time is relocation for the numbers over reconciliation of the support of Okinawa the original up beyond Japan and perks through the Kirk out is probable Hill 15. Controversies about the control of the present powers of future wars, the no longer able to be soldiers dependent to be set where the viability of the range of the fourth military presence so may be obliged to continue to list of the direct to be treated your family for the West Arab made the best part of the president of the watch these brothers control loss of first payments to Philippine based on the ones operating committed to maintain fourth possession of the spots of the government which is subject to the will of the electorate. Controversy on rise alliance efficiency degrades effectiveness, best scholarship proves and 15 quarrelsome politics order the American will deal presidents and repeatedly draw the terms of the time to capital in November and the political optimal structure for the capital defensive alliance because politics and exacerbated says it's short of the career was in the alliance after over the British shirt of the political relation raised open the hard political capital by the officially alliance and decision making these few resolutions becomes a board of these strategic calculation highlights that it be less effective than political compromise and after the take over the strategic calculation of economic problems will be the decline in terms of strategic means diplomatic political and economic situation that array the potential for alliance officially deteriorate and make automatic political solidarity strategic effectiveness they fully prioritize objectives away from full operational habit line managers road decision making the alliance is likely to be severely weakened. The plan creates a more equitable alliance ensures effectiveness responsiveness reducing presence key Japanese independence growth 13 gives the US and as a word of the revitalist the alliance should be set from the Japanese president throughout the risk of this time to the principal effect of the Japanese had the alliance social purpose good the alliance must be held after the public constitution assembly based on the world these secondly politically strong debate work for the US just by political authority which should accept the radio autonomy and a president of the Japan war as hard as votes the prepared will start to provide a license release for the US greater properties really present the US release some of the put by security alliance should respect Japan's desire to reduce military part of the Japanese authority to interpret the future course of the alliance watch the to get far more work through Tokyo and the fire without a problem of counter-terrorists and fully settled the speed over the location of satisfaction of the contract in Japan to manage the military obligation of the great ability to understand breakers of public property the open short time for the US push for basic rights run up against Japanese government's property security greater quality the alliance equitable partnership is key to effective G7 negotiations with Russia which solves Russia War Walker 3-1. Research Japan report to the first time all the rest of the PM's remaining foreign policy orders of the obvious and G7 sharply offered to acceptable for the regarding the membership of Japan study office that outside of officials of including this May is support of the popular statement with the individual with the proper of the potential history Japan solidarity with the US effectively communication will be found against all the sovereign global to even have to lead to the rest of Russia the new Cold War including the terms of Japan set play part of the Council office for consultation with us such active respect so subordination watching over walking the leading back remains a controversial force to lead walking the top for how the US effectively perspective the US are planetary emphasizing US G7 solidarity could lead to reckless litigation with Moscow over the office since 2000 in favor of political climate political 16 G7 submissions to be an opportunity to restore Russia back to the international community nuclear war farmer 15 technically Russia could love doing all that conflict post guards the short to war holding mortgage Putin could try to use after calculated lives would be too for the best thing about the final Russia to last year the other convention force the short notice for sacrifices as they could be used not only for the Community worship but it has to be seen through the rest of Russia together with the rights of grace and this calculation represents an essential threat strong diverse line cells disease Hubbard 11 the US has a part of the regardation for the public health disease being traveled across national border the rights of the Department of International Security global balance central in the US and European Department of Health and Jordan provinces both countries because of growing threat of birthday disease and time for the Canadian US participate celebration medical collaboration fully protocol health to major donor country demonstration how access in one area to be leveraged casting another back on body the reference to the US and make take steps to prevent the proliferation of serious in public health to the earliest possible stage extinction burnouts wrong Kircher 14 hours about how cost of pathogens one quickly because my time to spread is not always valid and overall could involve as well the world says can be limited by existing public population historical example of pandemic with devastating fat large number of people which makes the possibility of a global pandemic a realistic threat to human civilization advantage 2 op tempo high op tempo destroys air power readiness because of already morale decreased training Marines quit reducing Marine presence key to sustainable operational commitment Sloman 210 core circuit to gauge pilot strength to ensure that the suffer those operational commitments the limitation for equipment specifically charge of management Marine footage got to controlling people with homeland security commitments force deployment to do up the show once to do water the world goes away you ratio what the excessive deployment required for the tax support the Marine should be reducing Marine time for their favorite preventing training for readiness pushing Marines to leave as a service aircraft also suffering from the flight time is prematurely the platform subflight was causing classification instead of maintenance both pressure the front of the incentives behind the hangar as well. They maintain their skills water the globe, written in times of world together. She has pilots and historically enjoyed the conflict to be successful. Active must be traded from region to just actively do more or less community will. Never really suffer the further degradation of readiness. Combat capability makes it impossible to respond to ISIS. Rota 15 records. Warfare the machine suffers readiness. Pressure of the people to shine the readiness. Contingency after the program. Less of the accept war time to respond to residents. For contingency project to match with military readiness. Not work covered until these 2020. Sequestration will. Adoption for and continue operations after the one he proposed to fight ISIS extinction, but Cassie $40 match $2 billion. It's a palpable, highly probable right to attain nuclear, chemical, biological, WMD on the international black market from corrupt officials as stated. It's an effort to attack the U.S. ISIS. The modern first military will the world for creating trade with above average people adjusting attack the was really nature putting ISIS building off nuclear matches. And all of its other effects is really good. With 100 UMD weapons and casualty hope to be catastrophic. Specifically, marine air power is key to implement light carriers. That solves A2AD Acts 11 there. Is it there for the power of the rotating to prepare the more flexible base air force just very convenient to prepare the team to invest heavily in job jet to do everything invested for all defensive arms of light aircraft carrier the plus have maximum possible flexibility gates first control over the concentrating strike and super critical record the position is centralized like carrier capability to diversify versus air power option failure to respond to Golden's China and causes territorial disputes to escalate towards goal 15 effective effectiveness is significantly 54 protected reliable base attacks on the maritime company which forces for home to display the hopes of the what is the gate advanced ability to China response to China's A2D has been deemed critical ability to cast down to the US's ability to hinder revoyaging the strike the future part of the China flexibility persuasion the territorial disputes but the sets have one to lead Asian to get ahead the upper hand to open up for intervention in China's neighborhood nuclear war 10-15 absence effective position to directly conflicts about the geostrategic fiber the CHS characterized trade regional power graph serious interstate parts of regional war to be taken with every single global conflict the US China the pan over the three large economy conflict escalate roughly global nuclear war to the possibility of misperception by Scott Kaiser as a war to break out the effective US president of the region means it essential to hurt civil engagement making China could be persuaded to take part of the benefit for security and military risk will have to our conflict of recent classification by to ensure a reasonable balance of power the channel policy choices towards a more flexible means drawing down marine headquarters causes shift to flexible operational capacity which sustains surge and crisis response Kazaki 13 by layering active headquarters over the operational structure of the retail heavy drugs and spots over to the opportunities get to the federal organization more emphasis small operational units as we thought the goal must be to preserve actual warfare capabilities, course up to the recovery level, need to the headquarters, the regimental and group level coverage, the question of the entire level of community, liberated, no effect on operational capability, flexibility, approach, rely on that target organization, response operation, eliminates first victory, MES, headquarters, the decision, consolidate the remaining operating forces, and across the opportunity to lower the costs associated with the personnel while preserving operational capacity, the Marine Corps reserve providing support research capacity, the Marine Corps is recommended to balance for the identity for the 2050 use for the small resource of choice and reports affects major landlords and danger majority capabilities for third and the shifted reserve from readiness units to be moved to the reserve without pushing the nation's crisis responsiveness to deploy that shifts the Marines to light infantry, which is key to readiness. Top sheet 16, the Marine Corps has declared after the changing past the waging war. It's time to shift the war takes the back streets toward that period. Large regular war. The Marine Corps was fight as light infantry capable of operating in severe conditions with the logistical requirements of the Marine Corps focus on fighting as line infantry rather than more flexible competition with light and light infantry. Too much concern on armor protection, firepower, the leader attacks the infantry, the battalion lacks significant training and fighting as light or light infantry must be adopted to the more flexible creative tech force. Yes, the rally side execution less logistical to minimal directed for higher headquarters. So time is key to shift away from costly dependent on equipment and bases prevents further cuts in infantry battalion and manpower. Mayor 14 the war there expected something in 2002 hard to say police suppressor cuts to just 11 to temporary increase in war plan numbers no delegate just virus and cost for the quarter plan for reduction of 175,000 active duty Marines all cuts will come from operational needs Marine will still be cut down by teams because 30 politically correct combat units eliminating outdated headquarters support to practice the Marines and shut equipment headquarters and base truck about Marine Corps to sun keep the team of most troops to non-combat troop that forces helps not to be any conflict use manpower to do West they should adopt close good temper without replacement removing access equipment to use elsewhere abandoned anywhere barracks is an Okinawa basing thousands of Marines on ground the Marine readiness is key to fight gray zone conflict support special forces Barno Battle 15 Russia and next Crimea to the Islamic State forces to have Boko Haram conducting the Nigeria the Houthi rebels separate these characterized the hypertechnical by social media disrupt the separate technical and support to the data visibility cannot be the international order that's for the purpose of conflict the no ability enough despite having the near the Army of the Marines had dedicated for structure the famous order the Army of the Marines had instituted like capability specializing eventually make sure if a serious mistake has very attack solution proven adequate and effective based on conflict should say SOF I duly suited military component of the responsibility some conflict those go nuclear and F-15. The U.S. is simultaneously war, not a war, we're not living in the race necessary between healthy competition, open war, to keep down the pressure factors, the perfect example technological to be persistent, low-level conflict, increases with common war, major war, remains possible to and transport, especially about nuclear armed states, will avoid the cause of the country, fight brace on conflict, reach below the threshold, for global war, the paradigm looks like it's temporarily generated dangerous sentiment, percent warfare among major power, and increased potential for inadvertent conflict, war by miscalculation.
Okay, what about the plan merges the Marine Expeditionary Force headquarters, like the
we eliminate the headquarters at Futama, meaning that the third MES, like the third MEF is no longer on Okinawa. We would leave the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is a part of the third MEF, but as a structure, that force would like no longer.
Okay, what does the plan do to increase training as a light force for the Marines?
Our argument is that high operational tempo means there's literally no time for training missions now because they're always on deployment.
What evidence says that they would, if had time, would be trained as a light force?
That's just how this works, which is
Could
the
you show me
Sloman
where
evidence.
anything suggests that is quote unquote how this
The
works?
Sloman evidence, where it talks about the ratio of deployment
No,
to
I
dwell.
understand that you have a piece of evidence that says they don't have enough time to train. I'm wondering what piece
Oh,
of evidence
sorry,
says if they
okay.
were to train, it would be as a light force.
Two arguments. One is the Kozlowski evidence indicates that it trains as a heavy force in the status quo as a result of a dependency on fixed forward bases and heavy equipment, which the affirmative removes. Second
How
is
does the F
th-
remove the
Huh?
fact that the Marine Corps as an entity,
The
like
only
in
fixed
Iraq,
forward-
Afghanistan?
The only
There-
fixed forward base that we have for a Marine Expeditionary Force is
Yeah.
in Okinawa.
There-
So then why
in
aren't the
Iraq and
rest of the
Afghanistan-
Marines,
Huh?
why aren't the rest of the Marines at every other Marine base other than in
There-
Okinawa training as a light force now?
What other Marine bases? That's like, this is our argument,
So
right?
there
That
are
the Marines do
as
not
per
operate
all of your-
expeditionary
Mhm.
there are not expeditionary Marines operating out of any base other than Okinawa, forward deployed, we should say. There are
Okay,
bases at home, but
the
that's like a
first
different
Sloman
thing.
card about a high operational tempo is about how we're deploying the Marines right now to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So those are forward deployed Marines. They might not be base forward, but they're deployed forward. Why aren't those being trained in a light manner?
I think you're conflating parts of our argument. The part of the Sloman card that we care about is where it says that by reducing the mission to have them on Okinawa, it allows more.
Oh, I understand
There's
what part
also
you care
there's
about.
two different internal link arguments. There's one that says
Yeah.
that readiness and op tempo is too high, so we need to shift away from that, which will allow more Marines in places like Iraq to fight ISIS. That's
Yeah.
the first impact.
I'm asking why
the
those-
second impact is that we need to shift away from this dependency on fixed forward bases, which would force those Marines to go elsewhere, i.e., not be on a fixed forward base,
Right, so I'm
which would
saying
force them
there
to
are-
train like other Marines train, which is what our Kozlowski evidence and our Meyer evidence talks about, and that solves Great Wars.
Okay, so
So there's
where?
kind of two things going
No,
on.
I understand, but I'm asking why the extant Marines are unable to solve Grey Wars. Is it just that they're overstretched?
Our evidence says that we need a better combination of line infantry and light infantry.
Right.
Line infantry meaning like the Marines.
Why aren't they training as light infantry
There
now?
are Marines training as light infantry. Our argument
Okay.
is that the
Where do you have evidence
ratio
that there
is
are
screwed
Marines
up.
training as light infantry?
I mean, I'm not sure that there's a card that has that sentence,
Okay,
but they all
great.
pretty
What do
clearly
Marines
assume
do
that.
in gray zones to diffuse the escalation?
They operate as a capacity a little above special forces to give.
What
the
does that
United
mean
States
to
more
operate? Like, what do they
flexibility.
do on the ground?
So, like, whereas special forces are should only be used for like raids, etc., they're now being forced into larger scale combat operations, which we allow the Marines to fill in for, which like prevents escalations.
I've sent a document for Advantage 1, Advantage 2.
Yeah, here it is. Did you lose my? I'm just trying. It is right here.
Yeah, no, it's always good to have the reserve As a notorious case of disadvantaged debater, I understand.
First off, Prolif recent visits and assurances for incredibly high limit 1026. Between April and 12, Patrol 15 important leaders from Asia visit the U.S. and began with obvious these showed the U.S.'s power and impulse of the Pacific Northwest natural. And as far as Reform's first term, even for those who felt the U.S. had never left to begin with, the people was needed to rest for such the U.S. and to elect to the region with obvious. And the alliance was reinforced after 3 years on certain relations during the administration DBJ. Albeit removed tensions, always leadership and control to majority. Large majority that I opposed the collective self-defense bills to enabling a strong cooperation plan called Japanese Prolif as compensation makes regional nuclear conflict levels weighing 13 the causes what's all at the river necessarily rapidly escalating my general intense Sino-Japanese competition will lead to its woody crisis company will take advantage withdrawal by increasing pressure on Tokyo and disputes in the East China Sea out of security post right rapid withdrawal and probed by aggressive Chinese deliverers. Tokyo would deploy a major realignment and strategy moving toward nuclear weapons receptive Toronto would almost certainly lead to adverse to an independent nuclear return to safer winter territories and the conventional balance the nuclear domain would see elevated risk of confrontation with the benefit and at the other basis the tyranny of distance would drive a wedge between Japan and US forces Japan will receive an independent nuclear capability as a cost-effective means of fighting China's attack or coercion. The nuclear domain would become a locus if they say what's in competition China could launch a ground attack. I mean, utilization would set up a regional arms race for basically disrupting Tokyo and Beijing would raise the possibility of brinksmanship and confrontation, uniquely true now constitutional interpretation towards militarization. Mohammed 15 Japan, the U.S. upheld that sort of defense called, reflecting its willingness to take on the more robust role in time of growing Chinese power and rising concerns. No Washington told Japanese leaders his commitment to security reign ironclad the guidelines of whatever how wider signal Japan is ready to take responsibility for its security guidelines to allow cooperation militarily. They follow a cabinet resolution reinterpreting Japan's constitution, carry code guidelines, dating historic transition, the origin to the guidelines reflect a rapid evolution. And Japanese security policy represents the most dramatic shift or interpretation will also allow Japan to take action as minesweeping. That causes East Asian arms race and nuclear war chain later unite Japan, who set off a nuclear arms race to China, South Korea, Taiwan, and India, Pakistan, if the to further strengthen their capacity to move would indicate lack of trust in the American commitment to defend Japan as an erosion lines to upset the balance in East Asia. Next off is the hater disad. Marines are key to words at disaster response. Clear 11 Marines. On Okinawa operate as a one element of integrated comprehensive strategy. Removing assets would be a two-legged tool to reach setting to the essential Marine presence of the U.S. conduct humanitarian operation on Okinawa Marines routinely primary responder disasters in Asia, helping to save thousands and thousands of response to natural disasters. U.S. forces respond to the work as SDF has been flying within hours aircraft were involved with the numbers all based in Okinawa. Haters solve soft power disease, biodiversity, failed states, and refugees. Framework 13 USS George Washington allowed from 600 shots released lots natural disasters are becoming more one with the U.S. will increasingly be called on to assist in fragile states with inadequate public health that's particularly vulnerable to also crucial getting relief help and running during the immediate post-disaster facing hits are of larger strategic power to disaster relief boost self-power and since invested in it's a global force for good. This cannot be underestimated. Discussion within the U.S. and losing influence to China relief can contain disasters spreading crises easily spill over in massive refugee flows, threat of disease or environmental collapse. Relief is an opportunity to forge more autonomous relationship with other militaries. They can legitimize U.S. military presence, the only actor capable of carrying out such large-scale operations as the U.S. military. The force will responsible to for American commitment to allies and its partners. Self-power solves its station lag on them despite large economic challenges to major expansion rise of China, India, Brazil, and other new players on the international scene. The U.S. holds an unrivaled ability to confront terrorism, prolonged financial instability, pandemic disease, as atrocity or tyranny. The U.S. is still an indispensable nation. Soft power is crucial, sustaining investment leveraging as rules a catalyst. Next off is the relocation counterplan. The United States to transfer operations station and Marine Corps Air Station Futama to both their facilities in Hokkaido and return Marine Corps Air Station Futama to Japanese control. The United States should transfer ownership of all bases in Okinawa to a joint ownership model with the Japanese self-defense forces and make United States air bases. And Japan started with the Yokota Air Base available for civilian aviation for domestic Japanese low-cost carrier with the precondition that any commercial user must agree to diminish or cease operations. The United States' military request in the event of an emergency. The counterplan resolves the Futama Quiet transfer operations to the Northern Island is what Okinawa requested. Johnson 14 Okinawa contracted Secretary of Defense was also relocated the contingent and Futama to the parts of Japan saying that there are facilities from Kyushu to Hokkaido. The government says it's making the proposals to avoid disaster and reference local opposition of elected Futama and Okinawa wants to schedule and a sustainable way for all parties, including the locals, came up with the best plan based on open sources in the U.S., including U.S. Navy report. And the Strike requirements of the same types of aircraft station, including the MV-22 offset Okinawa found 35 household sites of proposals to just particular attention to bases in northern Japan station in the Marines on SCF base to enhance our mobility Marines would be better prepared to the Korean Peninsula contingency of located in northern Japan, which serves as instrument simple to Marines would be dispersed to temporary relocation site will be arranged while a final site with term relocation multiple stages without quickly relocator will give you enough time to prepare for construction of the final site. Next off is the advantage counterplan. The United States should reverse the cuts to the Marine Corps present and the budget control after 2011. The United States should increase the naval shipbuilding. The Marine Corps should sustain the deployment to 12 ratio. And the active force of 1 to 3. The United States should cancel reduction of the Joint Strike Fighter and increase reduction of the FA-18 Hornet and unmanned combat area vehicles that can operate from the decks of light amphibious carrier to expand undersea precision strike capacity and convert American class ships to amphibious light aircraft ships. Counterplan solves cheaper, lighter, better capabilities. Hedrick 13, the advent of H-280 technology pushing carrier strikers farther to solve a problem. Solution would be to cancel JSF while extending production of Hornet 6 over the development of production of UCAP would operate light amphibious carriers to weaken the Navy's pivot toward the new strategic armament, giving the U.S. flexibility and H-280 technologies. U.S. Navy must accelerate to ensure the UCAP by the transition bridge with UCAPs and greatness with extension undersea precision strike capacity. The U.S. would be able to invest in a large number of less exquisite and full squadrons to maintain the parts of the regional arms as organized squadrons would provide utility cost factor engagement. The budget control act cut the Marines and the counterplan reverse that which solves crisis response by card 14 and a 2013 SAC carrying landed almost by the President National Security Strategy solved by the Marine Corps straight to 186.8K. The BCA forced us to 182.1K. Our examination determined that entering the 174K was the best that we could do. Marine officials can achieve the 174,000 active duty level without having to force Marines out of service. Marine officials say that force cuts are similar to Marines are required to cut to 150,000 active strike. The involuntary measures would be making shipbuilding, solves all Temple Clark 15 agents and rising demand as high for naval forces. IS is fighting U.S. forces multiple fronts rivals, including China, Russia, rewriting matters, driving resist throughout over the last 8 Navy and Marine Corps, but the demand by doing more or less the number of ships deployed. The same ships they're working 20%. The Marine Corps is similar to making do and it's shrinking the Navy as war should maintain its level overseas presence without working over working the fleet, grow the fleet to increase shipbuilding is the most enduring way to increase the ability of the fleet to drive forward presence by the Navy's foreign time will fall short of standing today's old presence given the deployed cycles of the Navy wants to use. Flight requires at least $5 billion more than the requested alliance advantage. Elite consensus solves kick out and backlash of Combat 15. Okinawa concerns are hard-felt without making on our side of the no change of course. American Japanese soldiers try to sway the hero take out of view neither side, which is a municipal turn hides that would leave them to criminal massing based on Okinawa would leave the rest of the country had trouble by debate over burden sharing differential narrative. National press ignores equity of officials in Tokyo are contract to us of Okinawa because opposition to President Okinawa endanger security mainland apathy stops at Okamoto 50. The people mainland Japan do not understand the troubles of Okinawan series or the determination they feel when right to 74% of the U.S. bases in Okinawa. People think that's not fair, but they do not do anything about it. The reason why reduction in the U.S. military presence in Japan have been large scale and being the area has been slashed by 65%, while Okinawa has only 20%. They're screwed. U.S. presence in WU14 Tokyo will call this bluff and clamp down with all this sort of anti-baseball teaching on a lot of state college. There is not much Okinawa can do. Leaders who don't have the leverage leaving anti-baseball teaching able to make promise but unable to keep them because of Trump by Russian politics. Soldiers must confront security in these Okinawa's future will decide a powerful state's military presence is key to Japanese diplomacy. Simon 9 state role in the region great significance. One of the abilities for sexual SCF to make it easier to engage in peacekeeping fields or polar to boost the security legislation like the area which would handle Tokyo, Washington decided to expand this for military cooperation. This would represent a boost to Abe's effort to handle black military ties in East Asia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. You have no evidence Japan actually would get the deal done with Russia. Just they could. No, Russia war will go see it. 14, even if he's was one of Russia won't start another. And one, the world is mad. The Cold War never has to also nuclear war, extremely unlikely. Economic sanctions are more than waves. Less sanctions have begun to take their toll to apply the Russian economy. Calls for position to wage a world war. Putin's actions are more than a trade. Russia's popularity is not very high. Russia will have to face a unified world power fight. There is too much to say Ukraine. Russia is one thing. If Russia decides to take further action, it must also condemn its surrounding relation with realities of meaning. It isn't worth risking the domino effect of chances of this confrontation as leading to a grandpa war of slaying your disease. Evidence is aspirational and should not would. Also doesn't say Japan is key. Just that Japan could help no impact Hamburg in 14 planets are likely essential. There were people resist pathogens offering threatening emergency evolution does not favor parasites away about the hopes which will find the syphilis chronic as its prey. Advantage 2. Withdrawing forward presence calls PGS shift nuclear war wolf 224. Currents are generally for PGS, but
You
cuts
get
in the
those
Budget
Marines.
Control Act of 2011 to
Like,
bring them to the
wait. No,
levels
you
that
just
were
like fiated
pre-sequestered.
Marines
Yeah,
into
so
existence. Where
the
do you
first
get
piece of
them?
evidence we read says that the Marines are having to cut back because
Plan. I'm a little bit confused by this. So when you shift to a joint ownership model, no U.S. presence leaves.
Yeah, the U.S. presence stays there.
How do you just allow both a bunch of Japanese troops to move into bases without taking anyone out? Or do you just fiat that there's a bunch of new construction so like people can live there?
I don't think Japanese forces have to live at the bases.
So it's
they
a-
can train
okay, the
and do
piece of
joint
evidence you
operations
read, the
there.
distinction
And
it
our evidence
makes
says
is
that's what the
that the-
Okinawans explicitly
Well,
requested.
the distinction that your evidence makes in terms of like whether or not Okinawans care about this is that they want to see that it's not an American presence on their shores. Why do they care about a base if it's still just Americans?
Couple things. One, we moved to Hokkaido in northern Japan, which is not Okinawa.
Well, but you
which
also
resolves that backlash.
shift through Tenma and all Okinawa bases to dual use, right? Like that's also in the counterplan text.
We shift remaining bases after they counterplan to dual use. Those bases
So what
would be
bases
in
do you get
Hokkaido.
rid of from Okinawa? Because now you're like
We would
getting
move-
dangerously close to not competing.
Everyone stays in Japan.
Everyone
the
stays in
AF has
Jap-
to withdraw from Japan.
Okay.
The counterplan stays in Japan.
Sure. I guess I want to talk about this like conventional rearm thing real quick. You read a card that said it's bad on the Prolif DA, and then you read a card that says it's good on the op tempo advantage. Which is it?
I don't think that we said
Mm.
it was good on the other advantage.
That's fair.
The order will be alliance, op tempo, are we calling out the alliance counter? I can't remember what you all named it in the NC.
So the first one.
So the
will
one
be
that solves alliance,
The transfer
then the one that
counterplan,
solves marines.
Yeah.
And then the
Well,
advantage counter.
the one that claims
Sorry,
to solve.
claims to solve. Prolif disad, and then the disaster response.
The 2AC you sent is not
In order, yeah, if you want to just,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm gonna talk now. Good. Alright. Group the first three arguments whose time underwent long-term viability of truth domestic pressures will cause voters in the final arbiters, Spain, Philippines, and France prove that it's possible that Hill kick-out causes China land grabs, crease a hole in the fabric of the strategic deterrent. That's Yukio more likely now than in the past when Curry 11 says the U.S. military presence goes now with the much of a down that has been in 2 decades to the local west of the step up. Their confrontation with legal type of war jeopardizing the move the official they can show the Japan of Patil. The deal now raised the tax when the were both the worst of the land for the Lebanese support of the gas believing threat the Pujama placing the unraveled the Yoshihara helping Canada the Hanok until there were casualties on the ground. The Yoshihara protest communities close to the all-US and the Okinawa lobby would have to stop there. For presence doesn't invigorate diplomacy or distance from the U.S. is specifically key to getting Russia on board. Otherwise, Japan looks like an America's pawn. That's Walker off 5 equitable partnership key to bring Russia back to the G7. Japan is a critical approach when say, but being seen as the U.S. foreign policy puppet undermines their negotiation effectiveness and prevents Saudi from engaging Russia. That's Walker. A deal is coming now, but distance from the U.S. is key. Brown 215. Even if I were with the security government, Putin obstacles will make the Japanese side would encounter the opposition of the U.S. and the record of intervening. Japan will have the opportunity to play if all steps go well. A form of deal will be presented. All 6 and 7 Russia war escalate. Putin seizes NATO territory, assuming the alliance won't escalate the conflict. Conventional forces creates an existential risk. Farmer and their evidence is from underground, which means that you should prefer our evidence off 7 disease causing extinction. Burnout doesn't assume virulence evolution, which makes a global pandemic posture. That's crucial. The cooperation between Japan and the United States is critical in order to facilitate technological transfers. Our evidence is in aspirational op tempo. First is the PGS turn its inevitable congressional momentum. UE 15 Congress is pushing to accelerate the development. Those items are largely hot to the tide of the growing enthusiasm in Congress, which seems firmly on board the urges of the Pentagon to development. The Pentagon already says hundreds of millions of their multiple services as well. The interest in Congress says the intent of heading ahead. Tech is decades away. Very 13 CBD further than 10 years of deployment. That is the Washington decides to pursue the capability. Japan says no. Act in 13 while secret discussion the CPS any U.S. friend or ally. The Japanese acting toward the air to be able to eventually then charted the given Tokyo's control of Japanese experts and officials expressing the of escalation of to yes impact A2AD China war goes nuclear inability to respond collapses deterrence and insurance allows China to be more aggressive in the region absence the U.S. institutions means conflict escalation to miscalculate Torsal and Tana for yes there's a shifting from Okinawa MEF is key preserve surge capacity by consolidating forces and create a shift to crisis response to him is specifically key because it prevents cuts from other combat units now, which means that we solve their just as Kozlovsky and Meyer off 5 marine readiness the key to a gray zone conflict forces them to stick up with the SOF which allows response to hybrid threats. Seas nuclear risk uniquely likely in conflicts to operate just below the nuclear threshold. That's Barno and Captain and finally off 6 readiness makes ISIS response impossible. Half of the core below readiness levels and surge capacity is collapsed, which means that ground forces in Syria and Iraq. That's Dorado. They conceded the impact it goes nuclear causes extinction. They'll obtain WMDs now. The counter plan first, they can't solve the alliance marines. Signal failure of U.S.-Japan alliance pursued by China. Stalemate between the local and national governments will go to the courts. That's NS counter plan. Exacerbates the status quo. Okinawa captures the attention of the alliance managers, creates incoherences in the alliance and place burden sharing and reinforces reprioritization away from the operational habits. That's Anvil permutation, duos permutation, do the plan on any combination of the planks. All relocation plans will fail. Green 12 alternatives suggest the FR from the without significant shortfalls in the major words shift and the alternative would have to be fully acceptable in the alliance manager before the other data that will weaken the credibility of the alliance team will know how to the Okinawa and none of the alternative to fit the condition can't solve kick out protesters want them off the island empirically effective. That's Hill Yokota is operationally impossible. Hudson for the problem of electronics will only become more frequent to the introduce the Yokota the high probability of airplane after the incompetent field the type of the aircraft and the mechanical mechanical, human error, division between civilian and military, control the risk of impact. They want to build a team hard there, and you make the Japan government to take back Japan times 12. 9, the often the unacceptable in the Okinawa. They want to see the visible reduction of the U.S. military presence in the pre-pressure by showing the central government's willingness up the government, attract the Disney facilities likely, soliciting acceptance from the people of Okinawa to build the Nago base. The Marine counter plan changing the Marine mission fails 2 reasons. First is base reliance focused on fixed orders bases, makes presence vulnerable, and forces custom combat uses, also prevents integration with the Navy, which is critical to crisis response. As Klosowski and Meyer, 2 is op-tempo necessary to reduce mission said Marines, otherwise training and readiness effort. That's a Sloman evidence. Just cutting back sequestration isn't enough. The Sloman evidence says that there's a systemic failure within Marines in the status quo, which means that the ones you save aren't sufficient. Permutation, do well, permutation, do any combination of the planes reverse and economies of scale are key to assurance. Colby 1021 American military program to the range to the great good in the U.S. to the powerful, the U.S. able to use the influence of the international liberal order, the competition they said, but a Washington appropriately only grudge wrestling casting cost of the ammunition of the military power to happy original power to the state and regional orders, reducing presence in Okinawa self-based vulnerability prevents China using cruise missiles against bases static 12 Marine presence in Okinawa will be politically targeted missile strikes and they could close by erasing them front and getting them when they would do that. The least resistance will be relocated back to the U.S. civil condition, the U.S. military force and the expeditionary mindful logisticians and the improve the skill of the UNS and the UN to learn more and able to get adaptable and flexible and the usefulness during course of the inactivated. They will be better to the training facilities undergoing missile threats, field commanders prefer flexibility. Okinawa located within the range of Chinese missile perception and cruise missile effectiveness causes other states to adopt them, least to pro-live. Farley 14 require significant infrastructure deployment will fall within the means of Vietnam, Taiwan, and the Philippines. The example of the Chinese missiles and perception impact of the global announce the procurement decision gives the future of the nation the export we need system rapidly pro-live nuclear war miscalculated Richardson 13 cruise missiles back and capable of carrying a nuclear warhead to fighting the race and the rest of the catastrophic conflict missiles by proving that it was difficult to control because of the same accurate still designed to carry a conventional warhead is a nuclear warhead. The short-term warning times to be the escalation of the nuclear extension questions open a Pandora's path. The pro-lift is that one case is only turned.
You didn't say perm.
Yeah, I did. I said permutation, do both, permutation, do all combinations of the flanks. Prolift 1. Cases of link turn the strength of the alliance, the warfighting in the main prolift concerns Centauro. 14 is unclear whether Japan and South Korea really show they worry about the reduction of the world and the number of the nuclear weapons, the ability of the U.S. to defend them, and physically change the environment that concerns Japan development nuclear different factor would have to be the alliance with the U.S. Washington should remain the remind us allies they work out of the opportunity they should break up the alliance. 2. No link. The one is the evidence as it posits a large scale withdrawal from the region. South Korea and remaining Marine troops should solve 3. North Korean nukes are the biggest practical assurance. Marines have nothing to do with that, but trading the overall alliance is key and other assurances check for less factor. 11-15 North Korea's nuclear arsenal creating pressure to Japan will with Japan to flag and the effect of the driller system will meet this top line nuclear deterrence in 5 years possibly long as the only factor of reliance on the U.S. The global reinforcing the alliance is now related threat to reduce the proliferation ensuring the U.S. now to come to the nuclear intimidation the situation between pressure which attack the great allies on the extent that the chart of which is separable because of the U.S. counter pressure the multiple tools will be able to Washington is reaffirming the command by transferring the government enhancing the missile defense the demonstrating capabilities and providing the briefings and dialogue. Japan won't prolife even if the MPT collapse Lucky 15. Japan public and political support of this government is strong this time but to the Japan the values and the nuclear arsenal the mistake of the past with considers the worst case scenario perhaps saying breakout of the U.S. Japan alliance the club to non-proliferation or to the country of nuclear the study conclusively even in such a case it is questionable whether there is any viable secures the power to the with nuclear weapons or more undermine its survival only in case will the extent the damage an opponent that can control the would be a vulnerability to nuclear option impossible is not worthy consideration. 5 the plan solves assurance by making force a more politically sustainable human grab. 13 to implement bombs rebalance the important of the American Sea Battle in the Navy and Marine Corps will only increase the episode that permanently here's important in the region sees the wind the allies look to the U.S. for the assurance we have the issue of the front we will have to be heavily on Navy and Marine Corps the sea-based power protection. 6 also reducing vulnerabilities and 12 China's capabilities around the U.S. ways to think economic vulnerability for striking concentration logistical threat to the weapons substantial weakness for bilateral relations rather than historical weakness and these 2 would be the anxiety nuclear assurance outweighs conventional better. 15 is not the sector policy measure the U.S. allies and the conception of the East Asia wouldn't see the conventional deterrent the credible subject of the nuclear umbrella and nuclear weapons play a fundamental role in everything the conventional balance without a robust capability the allies become concerned with the conventional capabilities and capabilities the nuclear arsenal conventional rearm is the status quo that's the gross and huge evidence from the 1AC Japan will only be defensive Shalani 10-19 Japan's security efforts have been limitedly restricting the deployment of the offensive weapons remaining plus only 23% of the country more active world than peace and invasion Japan's a stronger defense pressure posture the Japan will reportedly enable the Japan to defend would enhance the capability and force all the emergence of a destabilizing power imbalance the Japan will govern highlight the difference between pacifism and passivity. Japan does not want support aggression in the military and to constitute a highly beneficial development of the world. The hater does that one case turns crisis upon readiness collapses at Hedrick 315 the court of the dire readiness situation resulting in the lack of the strength of the court of the unable to confront the unexpected threats of Japan said that 80% of the Marine aviation units the number they needed all the intel and the communication and unable to execute the mission requirements to dispersal as efficient Okinawa as in key Yara 12 Marines from Okinawa the training about expeditions of the allied country and getting the exercise and continuing the mission of the Marines you have to see in the Okinawa they would need to conduct the exercise and do so in large degree political scientists the arrest the location of the Marines is less critical as long as the training facilities are adequate and all they have to do is change the rotation the Marines were in Iraq and Afghanistan for decades, which means that somebody else did the hater missions that solidifies our soft power, which means that obviously that is able to fill in now 3 U.S. can't shape institutions, no credibility, new 13 in the debate over the U.S. emphasis, the part of the international body was a political non-starting America's inability, the political system was all that mattered at the time. Also, the country, the ability to shape international film, the U.S. international leadership is the major institution Doha hostile on climate, the undermine the Americans' competence and credibility, no longer leading the physical adjustment, U.S. international influence, the kind part of all causes U.S. credibility, torture, all lack of process on progress, and climate change. List is endless. Cross-X.
Good. All right, so what conflict starts because Vietnam develops cruise missiles?
Oh, the evidence says that cruise missiles can be equipped with nuclear weapons, which means that they which cannot be effectively seen on different countries' like radar screens when they're looking at missiles
Vietnam
coming
and
in.
the Philippines would get nuclear weapons?
No, the argument is that, well, kind of similar to PGS, right? That there's a miscalculation because the cruise missiles are misinterpreted by different countries around the world.
They're misinterpreted. Okay.
Yep.
So if that's the case,
Like
unhighlighted part of your Farley evidence says, quote, Vietnam already has multiple platforms available for the deployment of cruise missiles. If that is correct, then why don't status quo capabilities
There's a
cause
difference between
miscalculation?
having a platform that can launch a cruise missile and having a cruise missile that can be launched.
Yeah, sure.
Like
but
we have plenty of different platforms that can launch plenty of different things.
Sure, absolutely. But if
including,
your
say,
argument was about
PGS, but
miscalculation and a misperception, why wouldn't people misperceive
because
that?
they know that Vietnam
capability?
doesn't have cruise missiles. Like, just because you can launch a cruise missile does not mean that you have a cruise missile.
Okay, let's talk about the internal link to this add-on. This Haddock evidence indicates that vulnerability encourages cruise missile development. Where do you think that it says that curtailing that vulnerability causes countries who are already developing cruise missiles to scale that back?
Well, our internal link card says that countries only view them as beneficial to their countries if they have already been shown to be effective by countries like China. China has not shown cruise missiles to be effective because they haven't used them on a large-scale military installation, say like the United States military base in Okinawa.
All right, that's fine. This Chilean evidence that you read on the DISAD, this is only about current restrictions on SDF militarization and current changes Japan already made. Where do you think this evidence speaks to Japanese nuclearization?
Is this like the very last? I missed the card that you cited.
It was Chelany, Japan will only be defensive.
I think that
That card is answering the second component of the
Oh,
dissent.
okay. Sounds good. This Dion evidence about a perception of vulnerability, at the point where we still would have vulnerable aircraft carriers, vulnerable regional assets all throughout the region, why doesn't that also trigger this argument?
Because it's about Okinawa being vulnerable to a first strike.
Yeah, that card is like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
card
this
is
argument about
specific to our
Okinawa,
base.
but the argument there is the perception the US
It
is
literally
vulnerable
draws an
under-
exact line between Japan being uncertain about United States military commitments and the vulnerability of an Okinawan base.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
because-
get
well,
that this evidence
Like,
about
Can I-
Okinawa
can I-
is
perhaps-
contesting that, but
perhaps-
why does
oh,
the
wait,
warrant only
first of all-
apply to Okinawa?
Because
Well, maybe it applies elsewhere as well, which means that Japan has absolutely no assurance that the United States military presence in the
but it's
region
also,
can
like,
actually
aircraft
defend them,
carrier-
which is
aircraft
bad for
carriers,
uniqueness.
etc. Do not
Second,
draw Japan into the conflict
Does
because
this
it's not an
evidence
attack
cite
on
like
their
a single
soil.
Japanese official?
Huh?
which
Or never mind,
evidence?
that's fine.
That card's like a
We have 10.
conference
should be set. The order is the Hater DA. The counterplan out of the up-tempo Marine Readiness advantage. The case in the order of Alliance Readiness.
Can you do that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So first it's the Hater DA,
Okay.
then the counterplan out of Readiness,
And then the advantages.
the advantages in the order of Alliance Readiness.
Oh, but just 1 second, okay. I did read this card.
Got it. Thanks. Step up. Cool. Everybody good? Soft power outweighs its also laundry list of extinction threats like terror, proliferation, growth. They've conceded to resolve disease because we're able to stop it in its tracks, which means we don't need Japanese cooperation to get allies on board to effectively leverage hegemony, which is like in turns the case that biodiversity solves extinction. Jackson and 12 we are dependent on other species for our survival. The species that disappears may have unpredictable effects to the whole true chain. The way up to how humans at the top biodiversity is about resilience and redundancy. The fact of change when we weaken biodiversity, we increase likelihood some aspects is going off in expected direction of fate for humankind. Refugees are a conflict escalator, will turns terror, losure into forced displacement can observe the peace process, undermining economic development, exacerbate tensions. Refugee flows can be a source of regional conflict, triggering external intervention, providing armed refugee groups with her base rebels from which to conduct terrorist activities. Also turns the Russia advantage because it means that the U.S. will be able to work effectively with them in the G7, which is the internal link to their business. Now, they say case turn readiness counterplan solves this, and also the status quo disproves they have no uniqueness for the turn because Marines work now and save thousands of lives. That's clear. More Marines, A, heavy lift, Fargo, 14. The U.S. demonstrated it can rapidly bring typical capacities and resources to bear. DR PACOM provided aircraft to distributed personnel and provide necessary reconnaissance and logistical support. The strength of forward station to force in Asia conveniently contribute to operations is substantial. The most permanent reside in Japan. USFJ composed of the IMEF features a wide capacities from Brent's U.S. Marine lift capability. B is Okinawa's location, Lin, and 15 presence in Okinawa. Strategic importance of Brent's forward deployments, logistics capabilities, forward deploys allow objectives under time constraints due to proximity and access. USFJ can respond rapidly. Contingencies significantly shorter in combination to Hawaii or Guam without bases in Okinawa. Distance can delay time and Rex Marines left behind as a critical mass and combined training is key. Shoff 13 to close to 10 and reduce the Marine presence in Okinawa with separate components of Marines, breaks up Marines into small units and would base and train in multiple locations. This is unworkable operationally because Marines need a critical mass and reliable combined training regimen to maintain capabilities and responsiveness. D is collocation of the integrated components is crucial. They remove the Marine air unit, which is vital. Clear 13. The third MEO is its flexible, rapidly deployed, multiversity capability and contingency of the Pacific. The Marine task force requires a collection of integrated force Marine air unit off the underground capabilities for a broad spectrum of humanitarian contingency. Size matters. A large pool of human matters. Key KP and 15 American forces are well suited. They have assets at hand and respond quickly. Militaries have qualified capabilities. Just as importantly, our forces have a large pool of personnel ready to be deployed. Nothing else can fill in Stadler and 10. The only deployable force between Hawaii and India are Marines and Okinawa. The mission is not just conflicts. Think non-deployment, India, tsunami, cyclones. Central to the relief was the core of the bases in Okinawa. Make missions possible. Geography matters. Okinawa is the center. There's nowhere better hours, better time. Measured means the lives spared to systems and key measures of supporting stability, humanity, disaster relief missions, banks helping governments rebuild, contribute to political stability that sustains growth through the wider reach and dispersal doesn't solve because of the time factor, which was above Paxton, who says an increased readiness is key. The general of the Marines trying to get money, speaking in front of the Senate Armed Committee, it was the Senate Armed Forces Committee. So obviously, they're what they say. Rocket right Afghanistan disprove, but disasters are escalating as per our evidence. Indonesia tsunami, etc. means that now is uniquely key. Even if the U.S. can't shape institutions, our internal link is based on broadening the U.S. message and getting people on board because they see us as an ally as opposed to an adversary, which makes it look like we are an asset and allows other governments to be involved with us, which means we're able to do things independently, like resolve proliferation, stop terrorism, which solves the entirety of the F. They say all causes like torture does not matter. The plan is sufficient to overwhelm disasters causing Indonesia, deforestation, tips and 13 disasters exposed deep inequities in an earthquake and a tsunami, nature, Jakarta, below sea level, and did range could render so you don't have setback growth and development for years. It could reduce the country's ability to cooperate in global issues such as deforestation, which its involvement has been crucial. Deterioration could undermine stability, extinction. They're the lungs of the Earth. Sutherland and 15 rainforests are essential survival of the Marines or rainforests are the lungs of our planet. They produce vital oxygen. Significant rainforests are made. We have make sure rainforests facing ocean threats in Indonesia. Indonesia ranks third in emissions due to clearing of its rainforests. Now the counterplan, basically 100% of their advantage solvency of readiness is about the sequester and how it jacked the ability of the military to respond, which means that even if they can cite other issues that might overwhelm effectiveness, reversing the sequester is sufficient. Now the Meyer card is 100% about budget cuts. The Sloman card is about sequestration, slowment, and 16. These challenges stem from two conditions. The Marine is continuing to deploy even as the size of the force has shrunk, and budgetary turmoil prevented the service from carrying out important updates. Aviation readiness will continue to suffer unless adequate levels of funding are maintained and operational commitments are limited. Market limited. It also forcibly reduces operational tempo, which is sufficient. It increases end strength, which makes that plausible, which is sufficient to resolve the F. The Sirota card, the parts highlighted also about the budget. Now, the Hendricks portion of the counterplane is what's recommended in their Acts, Evidence Acts, and 11. The American cast is the other missing part of the Marine Air Force. The Hendricks proposed the Navy reduces four supercarriers in favor of large numbers of light carriers like America. That's a view. These shares the counterplane maximizes effectiveness. Hendricks and 13 American class amphibious ships have the potential to be the new generation of light aircraft carriers, which will allow the naval services to dramatically increase presence and strike potential throughout the maritime domain. Using America class as the light aircraft carrier provide significant flexibility. That card is marked up flexibility. Now, that means that we wrote fiat at force to a light footprint and advocate the type of materials their evidence says would be necessary. The permutation leads to both net benefits because it collapses to disaster relief as well. They're moving from Okinawa, as well as signaling that we are no longer interested. They say conditionality, which I forgot to answer. So, Michael... Actually, no, I got it. First, offense, critical thinking, reactive to multiple attacks, increases ability to evaluate best arguments, collapsing, teaches the neg to make strategic decisions. Second, neg flex, the F gets to parametricize the res by picking one example, which is an inherent advantage. Now, defense, not infinitely the rest of their time limits and quality of argument. The AF can always make AF key arguments and add-ons. Strategy and time skewer inevitable. The alternative is multiple T arguments and disheads require just as many answers. They are not uniquely complex. Perms check the advantages of fiat. To vote AF, you have to believe the debate has been irreparably damaged. Now, the cruise missiles business, there's zero reason that Vietnam and the Philippines decide to get cruise missiles because they are useful against U.S. bases. There is no scenario for them using them against bases. Their impact, the Richardson card, is only about nuclear-tipped cruise missiles, which none of these countries have, except in the world of Asian proliferation of nuclear weapons, which occurs in the world of the disad. Now, there's no link or impact to largely to being key to deterrent. The bag of the carrier is still vulnerable. That's for their 1NC evidence, which means that 1AC evidence, which means that it's irrelevant if they stop base vulnerability. The Richardson card is also about the status quo in terms of who has weapons, so it's irrelevant. Now, the alliance. First, no kick out. Elite consensus officials ignore it. Abe will sweep it under the rug. It's empirically proven because Japan has always shut down anti-base politicians. Ask yourself why now. And rating a single newswire card that says now is unique is not sufficient to be a warrant. B is mainland apathy. The vast majority don't do anything. That's economist Okamoto and Ho. Okinawa is a distraction, and the alliance is resilient too. And 14, the Okinawa issues focus our attention where the real challenge has been a broader framework coordination of the U.S. and Japanese military forces after the earthquake in tsunami demonstrate the reliance of the alliance. This is high-level support to that Japan's own cooperation during the Gulf War. The 2+2 meeting at the U.S. agreed to deploy reconnaissance troops to Japan, which pledged $2.1 million to relocate Marines. Abe deprived of appropriation of the anti-war constitution to add friendly nations to the modern-day alliance to be more inclusive, advocating initiatives such as trade and energy cooperation. The bigger than just the military, the TPP will attacking the alliance. Washington agreed to a long-term liquefied gas export deal with the ebb and flow of what's going on in the region. These two countries highly incentivized to make this work. The card just says that Obama won't be able to move the base now. There's no impact, and also does not say the Marines will be kicked off. Now, cooperation over diseases, Neville Baker and Gloucester in 15 addition, reaffirming commitment to security. The government's emphasized cooperation over climate change, energy security, development, health, disaster sites, and human empowerment. The government's released a statement on nuclear security almost demonstrate a shared commitment. There's no kick out. BL 810, the base is so important for the U.S. I think whatever purpose of the Okinawas will maybe eventually overruled. I'd be very surprised if anything else happens. I don't think local people have enough government authority. Abe and the American people are together. The base are too far important to give up. Material incentives outweigh anti-militarism studies. Cooley and Martin and Six, although our anti-base norms may inform the collective identity of society, they do not generate political interest. Collective identities remain politically intimate when they are overridden by well-returned Martin material incentives. Even when a strong pervasive norm to anti-militarism dominates, Japan can secure tacit acquiescence through an elaborate set of economic inducements. Political economy-based bargains maintain presence on Okinawa. Now the disease business, intervening actors check this. The Zakari evidence. We could set up blockades as well as quarantines, which are sufficient. Burnout also means there's no risk. It's the Saunders card. If it's that virulent, it will kill people before it can spread. No risk poser. And 5, the human host sapiens managed to survive every disease in 200,000 years. Natural selection favors limited lethality. They are fitter because their genes are more likely to spread. Germs do not kill the host too quickly. There's no danger. A pandemic would cause extinction. Variation means survival. York 14 diseases don't drive species extinct tightly. Contagious diseases tend to burn out. The reason is variation. You end up with infected individuals who survive and contain many instances of pathogen resistant genes that are spread through the population. Now Russia relations are high because of cooperation over Syria. Ormison and 16 for superpowers and frauds relations. U.S. and Russia have not edited truly recently. Gary wrapped up his third trip to Russia. It seems likely to have worked. Putin was unlikely, unusually complimentary of the U.S. role in Syria. The Secretary of State with agreement to speed up the timetable to urgency. The Syria crisis has pulled the two countries closer to each other like a huge geopolitical magnet. Layer upon layer, Kerry tries to reestablish a strong basis for Russian-American relations. Kerry's visit his close working relation with Lavrov are positioning the U.S. for the near future. Crisis won't go nuclear. Weber and 14, the entire cycle of U.S. intercontinental ballistic missiles is aimed at Russia. Russia's 100 ICBMs are returning the favor with Russia is still mutually assured destruction, which is deterrent enough. Now, the op-tempo advantage. First, uniqueness is conceded in ISIS because they are being crushed. The U.S. and Iraqi forces together are undermining their effect, which means it is fundamentally irrelevant. Yes. fundamentally irrelevant if we don't have Marines there. There's also no impact because the only risk of terrorism is homegrown. ISIS has been crushed and the numbers are far too small. That was the piece of 2NC evidence, 1NC evidence that was entirely conceded. Now, Grey Zones are made up. There's no unifying analytic value or even explanation of what it is, which is ELCAS. Our evidence says SOFs are able to solve now the readiness business. All the counterpoints of the military massively mismanages its money, etc. demonstrates they will not train as light force and puts them into the SOF like random solvency evidence suggests. There are tons of all costs to training as a light force there. Top Shikard 16 infantry battalions lack sufficient training and light force more methods for physical, mental, and moral warfare. Light infantry Marines must be able to live off the land with minimal direction from headquarters. Also, all causes to Grey Zones, burn and best all their card and 15 other army number races and institutionalized temporary capacities, specializing more than conventional needs for just these types of conflicts, temporary solutions, thrust, never-changing, missing conventional formations that these unfamiliar roles may provide both ineffective, inadequate, and ineffective. Policymakers obviously won't switch and just train them, especially if they're so overstretched. They won't create new programs.
Good? Alright. So just to get the impact straight, if the Marines take 4 extra days to get there, biodiversity entirely collapses and we all die.
Yep.
Why?
Our evidence says that a speedy response is necessary because that's when infrastructure is the most vulnerable. It's also the only time when we can reverse effects and prevent local people from.
Then I guess I'll talk about that.
The
Fargo 14 card that you read says PACOM's establishment of the Joint Task Force to operate. Or to do Operation Unified was able to solve. It says the U.S. Navy was able to provide affected areas with road building, electrical power, and water. It says the USF, the Japan forces composed of the 7th Fleet as well as the 5th Air Force were able to fill in. The KP evidence that you read said the U.S. Navy has more construction workers and civil engineers than the entirety of USAID. Why don't any of these forces fill in for the Marines?
Yeah. So, several reasons. First is that those are all effective, but much in the same way as you have made a claim that the special forces are only effective with Marine buttressing. So, are these disaster response elements only useful with Marine expeditionary buttressing?
So you've read 2 cards that barely even mention the Marines in a laundry list of other things, and you want to say that they are the critical supporting forces?
Yeah, and then we read several pieces of incredibly specific evidence about why the Marines underlie all of the rest of military apparatuses in terms of disaster response.
Did you read this Amos card? Speed matters. Marines in Japan are key.
I think so.
Okay, well, this article goes on to state, quote, the MEUs may operate in a disaggregated manner. They will be resourced to mitigate risk. This will include appropriate command and control assets and arrangements to accomplish a wider range of steady-state security activities.
I definitely did not read it because I did not read the dispersal header.
It's still, I just read an argument that the MEU is the critical supporting structure for all of these. We leave those 8,000 Marines. Why doesn't that solve?
Yeah, so a couple of reasons. First is that integrated components are necessary. That's the Klinger card. Also, our evidence says that the most possible number of Marines needs to be present. That's the KP card. So they need to be trained.
This card says
they need to be trained as an integrated unit, and then the KP
this card doesn't even say the word Marines. It just says militaries have unequal capabilities.
Right.
It then goes on to say the U.S. Navy. This is even the part Ava was making fun of you for. Has more construction workers and civil engineers than any other body.
Yes, construction workers are not exactly first responders. The Marines are. The card also makes an argument about why a large pool of personnel is necessary to successful disaster relief.
Okay, on the counterplane you say that rolling back sequestration is able to solve. The 2 cards that you read both say that improvements could be made by 2020. Why is this sufficient to solve your net benefits?
So this card says
in the face, 4 years
this card says in the face of sequestration, they will be able to get back up to capacity by 2020. The plan reverses sequestration and thus immediately resolves the issue with flexibility.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, same thing now. Alright, just that. It'll be the Alliance co-basing counter plan, the Prolift disallow, and possibly the second advantage. We'll see.
I like the optimism.
You know, I generally think that I'm a lot faster at this point than Freeman teaching the speech. So we'll see if this is the day. Let me know you two have it.
Yeah, this is never mind,
I got it.
Okay,
Good.
we're good.
I'm not, sorry. Which one is it?
Lowercase.
Got it. Thanks.
They've conceded the terminal impact. Proliferation outweighs 8. It magnifies all escalation rates. Every conflict is more deadly when every party has a new B subpoint. It bypasses checks on escalation calls preemption free Berg 15. If we're not on the acquisition of one like U.S. partners, East Asia may be improved their process for balancing Chinese power with their the theory reality of the interval during which is former hostile protection American umbrella at the point in which they acquire their own will be one in which they will use those to worsen threats and preempt attacking us against missile dials and multipolar nuclear order. East Asia might be especially prone to instability now. 2AC number 1 A subpoint. The budget counterplan solves the embedded uniqueness argument in a B subpoint. Commitment is higher. Limb evidence is newer. It says recent military visits have reassured Japanese partners C as all of our case defense takes out their internal anti-alliance D as that your author concludes presence is key to stop Prolif. Here they are a year later. Centauro Warden at 15. No potential super news will be set off the incident whether one Washington or not Washington with sacrifice. It is safe Tokyo. China's going to run or to Southwest because of narrowing conventional balance. The U.S. may as either a core interest. Washington should sustain military engagement. Asia Pacific should consider the recession is more certain China than Japan by maintaining robust troop presence. Efforts to achieve this and proposed more challenges. The U.S. also attracts anxiety by sustaining conventional capabilities, signaling U.S. interest on do so would striking allies to develop their nuclear weapons. Now Group 2AC 2 and 3. 1 is the plan tips Japanese calculations. Our evidence has priced in concerns over China and North Korea, and it says that those are reasons why they require a robust U.S. conventional force. And we are just barely assuring them now, which means the plan is enough to tilt the balance. Now, multiple more, they have independently conceded that withdrawal will be haphazard and poorly planned for. So even if they do not numerically withdraw a bunch of troops, the perception of a haphazard and mishandled withdrawal does trigger a B subpoint. Is public perception, fear of external threat, shifts, flips calculations, and reverse the current course. Machida 14. Japan has been going through changes around by increasing level of threats of neighboring states. Japan has begun to adopt a more aggressive policy. People's threat perceptions, powerfully dormitories, or attitudes for nuclear armament perception. China's military threat boosts their support for nuclear armament and finds an important implication for the prospect of nuclear proliferation under the assumption that Japan will destroy U.S. armament is unlikely to mean that it will never consider armament support will grow along with these levels of threat. China becomes more aggressive. Japan is increasingly assertive. Japanese history shows that states have changed drastically. A state dictated by the fascist ideology which transformed peaceful country. Fascist sort of threat that one cannot hide Japan. The Turkish force once again that one can observe changes that Japan could drive the country toward armament. The recent debate and certain possible origin of Japanese constitution should be inserted. And this context, C, withdrawing personnel is perceived as jacking the security guarantee Michelin and 14 U.S.-Japan mutual security agreement found in presence in Japan needing increase would demonstrate lack of political will to defend Japan as well as lack of commitment to its security guarantee ever personnel. But if the U.S. less incentive to follow through its obligation of reduction and force would harm U.S. security relations reduce presence would alter China's foreign policy. China's salami slicing tactics will increasingly increase any major departure from Japan would cause a letter checked out the result of U.S. forward force in Japan. They're central to ensuring U.S. maintains a strong presence in Asia and Okinawa. Ski Newcam 10-3 U.S. military base in Okinawa still in central terminators include pre-position there would always be something after we roll out its presence in the U.S. not really here so promise to defend Japan and its own infantry stage equivalents and forward base troops are viewed differently. Its adversaries, yes, Japanese proliferation. Your evidence is a freeze frame of the status quo and it does not assume the heightened threat perception after the app. Do not be fooled by their citation. The only warrant in Kulaki is citing a site from 1995, but all of our evidence is newer anti-prolif arguments are culturally outdated and internal politics on. And 15 with the average engagement of the Hillary over 80 in Japanese society leaving fastest through the Syrian lines are increasing crucial backstops for Japanese women to proliferation of China pursued to the ones who would not ban every threat renunciation to the ones who would have never an absolute private remorse by first asserted weapons of enhanced security after China's first nuclear test auto defined the non-nuclear principle was nonsense. Often claiming that nuclear reversion, political checks, internal commitments were on the nuclear break of and recently ambivalent about restraining nowadays Russian aside resist to resolutions authorized JSCF to operate overseas. In 2006, Soviet declared nuclear arsenal would not necessarily violate the constitution with Korea testing missiles in China enhancing its force and made the contest of Russian and another review. It's inevitable in Tokyo as a growing defense industry recently free exploration mastery over missile technology wasn't so capable of producing that plutonium fuel 1,000 bombs. Japan could develop places with explosives less eager a sophisticated arsenal in 3 to 5 faced with crisis. Those numbers plummeted as Japan pursues a more active role in these stages. We try to rethink its nuclear option effort to reduce nuclear risk. Regional worldwide appear increasingly in jeopardy. We don't have to win Prolif as you have conceded the emboldenment turn in the swayed evidence. The app makes gray zone complex more likely because China reads the app as a sign of weakness and perception alone triggers the prolific map behind. Hey, Tokyo's actors particularly ones increasingly important to advance the worse and non-proliferation change could carry serious consequences and is making conflict relations in many states secret trust and suspicion persists, creating paranoid, hearing verbal awareness, no change, at top of alarm bells. The region China Koreans might perceive this as dangerous development and use it as an excuse to increase their military capabilities, nuclear or otherwise. Now the McGrath evidence, A subpoint, that 2NT counterplan solves the warrantiness, which is overstretched. B subpoint, this is not about Japan, it's about broader Asian alliances. C subpoint, it takes a long time to shift our military doctrine, which means even if they win, they increase military capabilities. It does not happen soon enough because Japan is on the brink now. There are Dion evidence. One, the perception of vulnerability now because of things like aircraft carriers or other bases, which means they do not solve the turn and there is only a risk. Or like this also takes out the internal into the cruise missile argument too. This is from 2012. Our newer unique evidence military assurances are high. 3, it cites nobody, but here is evidence actually citing Japanese people. The Marines are the key metric commitment to 13. Almost every person in knowledge about U.S. military presence is large and capability presents U.S. presence Japan and all the price for the U.S. presence women also ensures other allies. The region keeps adversaries of the arms like the presence of Marines is very closely with the U.S. military presence. Deterrence because of its missile wing power, regardless of JSDF services, is the only reference point they use to measure U.S. forces' presence in the number of Marines stationed in Japan. The majority are very sensitive to the outside perception of U.S. presence. Japan, they consider whether a change to U.S. force structure would undermine the deterrence goal. Japanese defense establishment does not want to U.S. force deploy force in Japan to go lower the currently agreed upon level, particularly one to ensure level of the Marines' presence will not go lower than its current level now. Nuclear deterrence is insufficient because any small change can have an impact, and it's not credible for its 14. The nature of the power distribution complex matter allies are not unified. China and North Korea cannot be said to consider unified around these to make U.S. foundation or a completely thermal into a world free of nuclear weapons naturally in conflict with its nuclear bubble terminology. U.S. policy stations from extended nuclear turns just extended turn signaling electors who use nuclear weapons in defense of allies. Nuclear weapons are never being actually used with these allies and they hope they weren't group like nuclear weapons Asia plus the retirement of delivery system put the U.S. at disadvantage when trying to bolster the credibility of nuclear arsenals to Asian allies. And back to the counterplan, I realized I forgot to kick it. Not going for a perm test of competition theory, reject the argument of the team. Advantage 2. 1. Peace negotiations solvation on 7. It also made a movie said Russia the objections of identified missiles refusal to battle the bans will be the massification missile strike NATO will invade acceptably followed by talks that will stop the war and put negotiations into motion and there's here. Yeah. Okay.
346.
The order is going to be the alliance advantage, the up-tempo advantage, then the Prolif DA. The Marines counterplan, advantage counterplan for all that is, and the Hater DA.
Look how pretty the clouds are. Isn't that nice?
Okay, so I'm actually gonna grab some water real quick if that's
That's good. Puts my word distraction.
alliance advantage, up-tempo advantage, Prolif DA, counterplan, disaster response DA.
No. Sweethearts, Eastern candy. Nice. It's the best Eastern candy. Okay. Well, sweethearts are the best candy. Yes. All right.
We're all good, Doctor.
Oh, I thought I was still waiting for. Oh, okay. Never mind then.
All right.
All right.
Russia and the United States have the two largest nuclear arsenals in the world. Any escalation is definitely extinction. They don't answer the internal link evidence. Our envol card indicates that only Japan can facilitate cooperation between Russia and the United States. This outweighs their ISIS card, which sort of obliquely says they are able to cooperate on one issue, which might be true, but our evidence from March indicates that they will not be reintegrated into the global order. In the status quo, the first card they read doesn't count because it's from an undergraduate. The card they read in the one in R is from 2007. The kickout debate. It'll happen. One, empirics. It happened in France, Spain, the Philippines, which is the Hill. Evidence elite consensus is irrelevant because the electorate can throw them out, which is proved by de Gaulle. They don't assume China funding the movement, which is Yamada. They become violent. They make escalation of the crisis inevitable. Their evidence says status quo. Politicians can't do the kickout. We have a predictive argument, which doesn't answer our predictive argument. They also don't assume the recent lawsuit that Flores Sabe to hold construction, which proves that resistance has long-term impact. Their cards are literally from the Newswire. It's the Economist and APRs are all Japan. Also all Japan experts. Elections clearly matter. Hatsuyama was elected on an anti-base platform and wasn't able to get anything done, so he had to resign. resign, kick out accesses all their impacts. McCormick 1020, despite the enormous disparity between Okinawa, they just hit the Okinawa cards fought from host for close to Judea to Okinawa, startling hand confronting violence of police, but they were resisted. Enough people gathered, base constructed camp. Spot that is true. Several hundreds of protesters now gathering every day. Camp Schwab gates were being expanded several thousands. The state would have to concede this defeat. We're not going for disease. It's only an impact to the hater. It's only an impact to the hater. This also Russia will definitely escalate. NSS proves pain 212. The December 31st, the new NSS blueprint for Moscow's militaristic authority to take its illegitimacy through nationalism for Western military attack competition. Not the order of the day. Russia's military action reflect the unrolling dies of Russian domination through the force of Russification and cringe in Germany 1930. In January, Russia began burning library books. Food makes freedom. Stated explicitly reference to nuclear attack. Moscow continues to reject U.S. overtures. Power reserves that ensure victory in nuclear bunkers are prepared for use. Russian nuclear doctrine appears to call for actual first-use nuclear weapons. Russian troops could overrun the Baltic in 36 hours. This is not Cold War. This is not Cold War romanticism. Our evidence does indicate Japan is sufficient because it can both. Our evidence does indicate Japan is sufficient because it is necessary to both Putin's and the United States' perception of the gray zones. The second advantage: gray zones are a persistent conflict below levels. SOF doesn't solve because it can't provide a clear escalation out because Kozlowski evidence indicates only the act is able to solve because it removes the expeditionary mindset that makes it impossible. In the status quo, the pro-lift they need to have a means to deploy the nukes. They don't have it in the status quo. Visits are sufficient to solve assurance. Then that is how reassurance could happen because pro-lift is 0 to 100. The U.S. has multiple opportunities to reassure, proven by the thesis their PGS that Japan was going to go crazy. Then Obama would offer them things. The plan doesn't take consideration through Carter assumes a worst-case scenario. 30 years from now, their Bosch withdrawal arc is also just another worst-case claim. Their public perception arc is about North Korea being scary, which just proves the 2AC pieces of evidence that we've read that indicates that is far more important. That is far more important. The permutation on the DA also resolves these questions by providing the perception that Obama is no longer going to retrench proliferation as assurances of the status quo because of the number of nuclear weapons. It matters more than conventional forces. They think they're at risk, which is Santoro. It's important because it's the only comparative one that he wrote. A2AD, we're unable to deal with the threat, makes our allies lose confidence in our forces, which is the Torsfall argument, which they haven't answered. Reassurance solves because we're able to reinvigorate the alliance and reduce base vulnerability. It is not possible that both the alliance advantage and this dis are true, and we've won so much of that thesis that we've won so much of that thesis. Then obviously we will be able to reassure there are no proliferation. 1, no more dependent Japan gets on nuclear deterrence, the more influence U.S. has over their actions. That's on graph 2. Massive domestic pressure prevents it. 3, alliance framework checks, which is above. It takes years and costs billions. Lewis 14. Nor Japan 6 months away. There's no technical base for the claim. The claim they would say strategic thinkers 76 strategies intelligence report conclude nuclear deterrent costs $2 billion. It takes up years because Japan would not jury rig tiny arsenal out of civil deployment. It's not a thermostat. Causality is disproven by the fact that Japan is on the brink with U.S. President Lewis 14. We often talk about nuclear thermostats, credit declines, but Japan will build nuclear arsenals. Right, and that's not right at all. For Japan becoming a nuclear power would require dramatic raising policy historically centered on armed neutrality. Japan lacks such options that compensate for reactionary behavior. Their credit arguments are based on abstract theory, not Japan's political reality. Lewis 14, we talk about. I already read that card. Though Abe's militarism, it doesn't create a brink. Tatsumi 14 because Abe holds so many ambitious security policy goals. He's unlikely to push for an extremely ambitious stretch towards nuclear autonomy and conventional Japan's conventional weapons will always be a defensive. And Japan's conventional weapons will always be a defensive system. They haven't theoretic piece of evidence to counter interprets their political culture, and all the cards I read about Abe above answer this argument. Now the counterpoint permutation is permutation extended links to the if they aren't able to, even if they redo the sequester, they can't solve the D to D. They can't solve the D to D issue or reliance on fixed forward bases, which is what the Kozlowski and the Fidesz as well as the Meyer evidence is actually, which is what the Kozlowski and Meyer evidence is actually talk about. Vietnam and the Philippines Sea missiles is cost efficient. Their impact is not nuclear proliferation; it's miscalculation because they'll launch them and nobody knows what they are tipped with. The hater Readiness collapses crisis response. 80% of the Corps can't get to conflict because there isn't any intelligence or communications with the heretic evidence. Dispersal is able to solve it. Okinawa is operationally relevant, can be anywhere and provide the same mission with Sigara evidence. Soft power is nonsense. They don't answer the numerous all-cause lack of work on climate change, torture, etc. The cross-examination is also ridiculous because there are dozens of capabilities, including the U.S. Navy, the Army, Japanese, the U.S. Navy, which they list a bunch of other heavy forces for. The CAPI evidence indicates the Navy is able to solve to this. They also don't have a card that makes a difference between the response being a day or two in terms of the impact, which is critical because it's ludicrous to think that that's the difference between soft power collapsing or the environment collapsing, etc. There's no unique system of the turns case argument. There are too many all causes. There's already something. Megarian 13, the U.S. been rocked by Benghazi. Justice Department monitoring called the IRS seems to be targeting certain political group. NSA monitoring one geopolitical scandal have seriously tarnished the ability of the USA to circumscribe its ability to exert spark power. March the word soft power cascade isn't probable or going to happen. Zealot 13 dire warning third localized impact of trigger global scale tipping points are thrown abruptly and permanently out of whack. Have no scientific basis. Global scale changes come fast slowly and globally. The local impact of any structure or vastly disparate part of the growth. The heterogeneous Virginia suggests that the planetary system will remain fully stable, at the very least global chaos transition would be very gradual rather than abrupt and catastrophic. There's no transport of Stumbo 14. While it might seem that Marine space in the Pacific can get to initiate activity more quickly in California, only Marines dedicated to the lift have deployment advantage. Marines are based in the Pacific Island without dedicated lifts. They're in time to position.
We had, I believe, about 6:38. So you're gonna piece of defense. Okay. Michael will send you a card.
A duck?
I'm sorry? A doc?
It's just a card. Do you want me to save it or just attach it?
Oh no, I was just like doing my cards.
Just a card. No. Just one.
I'm in favor of as many as you can.
Yeah.
Do I have any more prep?
How do you feel about
I
2
am
AR
looking at
cards?
the profile. It is just freezing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
When
in the
Jeff was
Dropbox,
a
Michael.
freshman, Carney made him read a
Last
2 and R card in every debate so that, like, whether he needed it or not, so that if he ever needed to read one, he would know how to make time for it.
Yeah, if you just save it, I can.
Okay. I just saved it just 2 in. Sorry about the delay.
Sent. The order is the Prolif dissect, the counterplan that was extended, obviously, the hater DA, the alliance advantage, the readiness advantage.
Prolif, counterplan, hater, alliance, outtemper.
Yep. Okay, everybody ready? Awesome. Proliferation creates a structural incentive for all conflicts to go nuclear immediately, a non-dyadic system, but instead one where multiple powers have nuclear weapons means that mutually assured destruction is collapsed. There's potential for preemption, which is uniquely high in Asia. The Freeburg card, which is conceded. There are historical rivalry, short flight times, low command and control, which make it uniquely likely to escalate, unlike a system between the US and Russia where mutually assured destruction is held for decades when it was way worse. In the case of the Cuban Missile Crisis, etc., they've also conceded that the perception of Japan nuclearizing is sufficient to get China, Russia, other regional countries to preempt because they have security interests in the region, which means they get drawn in on the other side from the United States, which escalates to nuclear war in the incredibly short term. Now, the AF takes in a very long time. They need to convince Russia to put the button away. Also, they need to get to a point where Russia and the US are cooperating. There's no evidence that Russia would go to war shortly anyway, which means that the dissent outweighs it with magnitude and time frame. You can only die once, so you need to prefer it even if there is a lower risk. Now, they say no technology. Japan is a lead nuclear power. It could proliferate in a year. They have more nuclear power than any other country. They are the outfitter of basically every advanced technology in the entire world. It's the Hun card perception also takes us out. This is Pacherevic, but it happens fast. Keck, 14 experts believe that Japan can produce nukes within 6 months. Japan has done little to mollify those concerns. Japanese official says off the record Japan already has the tech capability to build a nuclear bomb and has since the 80s. Now, the link debate here is a framing. The Japanese people and politicians are incredibly paranoid because of declining U.S. nuclear security guarantee as well as the rise of China and North Korea, which means that they view the plan as part of a trend towards larger abandonment. A, as it's unexpected and uncoordinated, which is the swing card and Santoro card. Even if in the abstract they increase deterrence, there's a time frame distinction where in the short term it appears as though we are abandoning them to try an entirely new strategy based on light training or whatever the fuck their app is about, which means the Japanese people freak out. B is trending. It is seen as us walking towards withdrawing all of our personnel, which means they feel like they need to proliferate now so that when the personnel are gone, they will have something there to sustain them. C is that Marines are uniquely key, even if they are not technically or even if they are not a strong deterrent force. That is what the politicians and the people fixate on uniquely because of their massive overblown importance. The U.S. has been fighting for them on Okinawa, as is Abe, which means that everybody is convinced they're incredibly important, which is Newsom and Tatsumi also takes out the alliance turns arguments because it proves that even when they are an alliance contentious issue, the people still look at them as important, even if the Okinawans would collapse the Okinawan alliance. They've conceded too many arguments about why the alliance independence of the Okinawa issue is resilient, which means it's only a question of whether they feel guaranteed by our security. Now, the part of the problem solves it obviously doesn't. Uniqueness debate, and we are increasing our assurance now with military to military visits. They have also not proliferated, which means the uniqueness can only go negative, and they cannot access a turn. Our evidence says that we're continuing it as necessary. That's the Santoro card now. They say A2AD US pwns China, which was the Carpenter evidence they never replied to, which means that they have sufficient confidence. Also, this just demonstrates a break since they have not proliferated yet. They say the plan solves the alliance. Yes, we can win both. I explained that above. No prolif. Yes. The first is that the political situation is unique in the history of Japan because they are considering revising the alliance. They went from an incredibly militaristic country to a pacifist one so they could go the other direction. The peaceniks are literally dying out as per our Hunt evidence. They are too old, which means that the new generation of Japanese people does not see why they should not be a regular nuclear armed country. Abe is incredibly militaristic. This card that says Abe can't pursue future things is not in the context of withdrawal. It just means that he will not proliferate now, which takes out the later. Now, they say they're conventionally defensive does not matter because nuclear weapons are inherently stabilized, low command and control, incentive for first strike, etc., which was above. Anything else, Michael?
No?
Advanced counterplay not going for, at least to the benefit of relevant. The Vietnam-Philippines thing is laughable. This was shadow extended. No answer to the fact that tons of countries already have these weapons. Richardson's about the status quo. The only impact is about nuclear tip missiles, which only happen in a world of the distance. So this is an advanced trust and not to them. For the Philippines and Vietnam have external motivations like the weapons that already exist. And since the U.S. is still vulnerable post the plan in terms of its carrier, etc., that means that the plan does not solve this or the link term because it means that there are still other sources of vulnerability. Their cards, every time it says Okinawa, right before it unhighlighted as other Japanese bases. The South Korean bases should also trigger this, which means it cannot be an advantage for them. Now the hater DA can see that soft power is a joke. Also, there's no impact of disease alliance.
Did you say they can't go for the perm?
Yes, they can't go for the perm because we're kicking in. It was just a test of competition, not an advocacy. That was conditionality. Alliance. The Russia escalation stuff, this card that they have read in the 1AR jacks the entire debate because it way increases the solvency threshold. This says that Russia is hell-bent on expansion and control, which means they have rejected every U.S. overture. They are increasing their funds. They are massively militarizing. They have reversed their position on first use, etc. There is zero reason that Japan getting Russia into the G7 would reverse all of these, and if it would, then U.S. cooperation over Syria should also be sufficient because that is a direct example of military to military cooperation. They are cooperating in unprecedented ways. It's overwhelming all of the frosty relations that occurred before because they are cooperating over Syria and recognize they have shared interests. The Ormison card is from 326, which postdates all of their evidence and independently means that Russia would not launch on the United States. So double bind, either neither solves or both do. Now, the U.S. Deterrence and rationality means that will never escalate even if Russia shoots on the U.S. and it will not because the countries have weapons pointed directly at each other and both sides have an interest in self-preservation. Even if Russia's expansionist, they want to survive. That's the Weber card. Second is that peace negotiations have historically been able to solve evil intentions and expansion are high. That's the Ivashov card. Now, the kick-out business. Here are a couple of frames. A is empirics. They have been complaining for decades and their base has never been kicked out. B is incentive. Our evidence says that they are getting paid off, which means that it will always be overwhelmed. Our evidence cites studies, unlike their flash in the pan evidence. The 1AR, 1AC evidence about China just not predictive, and it just says that the U.S. will have to make quote-unquote hard choices. That's irrelevant. We will maintain the base. All the 2NC and 1NC evidence says that Abe will overwhelm opposition because the base is too fundamentally important. That was also a card in the 1NR. There is also no impact of freezing construction because we will still maintain the current base that we have. The McCormack card is a truth out piece of evidence, so you should reject it. It's also not predictive. Ours is comparative, and they have not provided a rationale for why this time is uniquely different. Now, the readiness business, I don't have to spend much time here because the 1AR was Terabad. There is no impact of ray zones or an explanation of what they even are. The status quo forces are sufficient to solve things like ISIS in China, which were conceded 1NC and 2NC uniqueness claims, which means there's no ray zone that could exist, especially because there's not even a war over Russia. 3L calls is citing their evidence not answered. A is sequester. B is that they won't train, and C is that they won't spend enough money or do the light carrier thing anyway because the military is locked in.
I always feel guilty when I'm putting the speech doc together after the 2AR prep has ended. Like, I feel like I have to be like, I'm not stealing prep.
Yeah. I always put our doc together, like, after the 1NR is over. And so, like, if the 2AR is just, like, standing up, or the, like, 2NR is standing up, I'll, like, still be putting it together 'cause it's, like, not prep. But I know everyone thinks I'm stealing prep. But don't
I'm
worry.
not even giving another speech, so like,
I won't
how
give you a
could
3NR, so you'll be fine.
We're vetoing that anyway.
The Alliance, Prolif, no, Alliance, Counterplan, Prolif. Ready? Russia war caused the extinction of Putin kept seize NATO territory after calculating that NATO wouldn't respond, but they will it'll go nuclear because any standoff between the United States and Russia will inevitably escalate due to miscalculation. That's the former evidence. The 1AR card doesn't raise the threshold too far. Reincorporation within the G7 resolves the Cold War between NATO countries and Russia, now decrease the incentive for them to act aggressively in places like the Caucasus or Baltics. 1AR evidence says that the reason for Russian aggression right now is that they continue to reject U.S. overtures and calls for reconciliation. The only card in the debate that says that we are able to bring Russia within a new alliance and a new framework that could resolve the tensions and the status quo is AF evidence, which means that you should err affirmative now. Every Russia card that they have read is about the 1NC card. It's from an undergrad, so it doesn't count the ISIS card. They read says that Kerry wants Russian cooperation and has visited there. The fact that we can cooperate on an issue of mutual interest does not disprove the general trend of the Cold War, which is proven by Ukraine because we were cooperating with Russia before that happened. This card is from a journalist and doesn't impact these arguments in terms of conflicts Japan and serves as a mutual broker, but only if it is seen as a subservient by Russia. The 1NR no war card is from 2007. Not only does not assume Ukraine, it doesn't assume the 2008 invasion of Georgia. Putin's Russia is a resurgent power hell-bent on Russification as per the 1AR evidence. If peace talks are possible and they still require Japanese intervention, now the kick-out debate first. The kick-out will happen now. It can and will happen. It's heating up. Protests are getting violent, and China will pay off the protest movements, which is a warrant that they conceded. That's all in the Yamada evidence. Ask yourself how much assurance is Japan going to have in the alliance after China literally goes into their territories and starts paying off a secessionist group. That was said in the 2NR, and not a word is breathed on in the 2NR. Now it says sole secessionist movement toward which China is sympathetic, and it says that Okinawa strike discordant note in the alliance in face of a growing assertiveness by China, which means that the Okinawa dispute is already perceived by China, which means that they'll take advantage of it. It proves that China already pursues our weakness, and it turns the disadvantage. They say empirics that is the Shariah Hill evidence that says that Philippines and multiple other countries have been voted out of the electorate. Also, the dropped arguments about the mayor of Okinawa being voted out of office. They say incentives, but no, even if full kick-out doesn't happen, then it still turns the disadvantage because China literally pays them off. Now the counterplan, they conceded that China will strike our assets in the status quo. Okinawan bases are the ones that are important for proliferation concerns. That's a Diane evidence. It says that Japan views the vulnerability as an issue for assurance, for the alliance, which means that you should ask yourself if our assets are so irrevocably insecure within the region that they can be first striked by China, and Japan knows that that will happen, then why on earth are they not already acquiring their own nuclear weapons? Because what good does military presence do if you could just missile strike it at the drop of a hat? Now, the prolix at proper first is that they have completely conceded the entire nuclear assurance debate. It outweighs conventional assurance. First is that assurance is low now because allies care about the number of nuclear weapons, and the U.S. fiscal environment proves that they will be decreasing in the status quo. We are not doing things like modernization efforts anymore, and Japan perceives that as a reason why they cannot put faith in the alliance. That's to our evidence. Two is that allies don't view conventional as a credible deterrent. Nuclear is key because it determines the pro-left ambitions of other countries. None of their link cards draw a strict line between withdrawal of Okinawan presence and proliferation of Japan, which means that you should be highly skeptical. However, our evidence is very good on the fact that nuclear pressures are what determines whether or not a country is going to proliferate. Now, reassurance is able to solve one. North Korea is the main determinant for Japan proliferation pressures, and the Marines are not credible for any kind of conflict with them, which is a conceded war, and all of the arguments on the hater dissent prove why, because they cannot get to a conflict in time, which means that that North Korea is a pressure for them to proliferate, even if the Marines are not there. It also proves that if assurances were so low, then they should have already proliferated. But further the U.S. moves from conventional deterrence, the more reliant Japan is on nuclear deterrence, which means that the United States has more counter-prolif pressures. This is a link term because it means that the more troops that we remove, the more that they are dependent on nuclear deterrence, and the United States can say, you know what, Japan, we will do things like transfer arms, increase missile defense, or demonstrate capabilities like freedom of navigation operations or overflight flights, and doing briefings and dialogue in order to reassure you. But if you try to proliferate in the status quo, then we will withdraw our nuclear umbrella, which is the Spectre evidence. Now that all proves no pro-left. First is that it's not 0 to nukes in 6 months. It takes a while, so the U.S. shifts to make more effective Marine posture would be able to solve the plan, leads to a sustainable posture, and it doesn't assure in the status quo anyway, which is the Diane evidence that was extended on the counter plan. 2 is that there's massive domestic pressure against proliferation in the status quo, and 3 is that the alliance framework is able to check if it is true that the United States and Japan have a massively strong alliance as a result of the plan, then why would they proliferate in the face of it? Now a couple more arguments that were conceded. First, they do not have a card about Abe. He is focused on conventional issues, Article 9 revision, etc. He wouldn't want to expend political capital, nuclear weapons, civil plutonium would never use to make a bomb. It's not weapons grade. Japan would have to spend billions to use on it. That's Lewis. And the one in our card they're reading obliquely references experts. Our Lewis evidence is from a 6-month time frame, is based on an anonymous guess from the 70s that has no basis in reality. The norms are too strong. The Kulaki evidence I already extended said that even if the NDT collapsed, they wouldn't proliferate. Their link cards are terrible. The Makati evidence says that the U.S. populace is getting closer to nuclearization because they fear China, that the lack of response to A2AD should non-uniqueness in the status quo, and it's not about the act. McLaughlin evidence is also not about the act. The only one that they have read says completely abandoning Okinawa might make them prolif, but we don't do that.
Good week. I should not.
Okay.
But
Okay.
good week. I am too, but